Hi everyone, this is Sunny from Database Tech. So today I had come up with one more new session on SQL Server Database. In today's session, I will explain what is return parameter in stored procedure. So let's understand each point one by one practically in SQL Server. And starting with the first point as return parameter is used to return integer value from the stored procedure. So let's understand this, and for that let's open SQL Server first. So here we have a table named as employee details, which is the existing table that belongs to database name as master, which you can see here from this drop down list. And this drop down list have all the databases that belongs to this server. So now let's execute this query to get the data from employee details using select statement, because select statement we use to fetch data from a table. And how to execute the query? Select the query and click on execute. You can see we have the below output from this table. So now let's see how to return integer value from stored procedure using return parameter. But before that, let's create a stored procedure. And in case you are not aware of stored procedure, how to create it, you can go through my previous session of stored procedure part 1. But don't worry, I will show it again. So let's create a stored procedure first. The syntax is create procedure and the name of the procedure. So let's give it a name as return sp. I had given the name as return sp, but you can give any meaningful name, depends on the requirement. Then keyword as begin end. So we have to write our queries between begin and end clause. Now this is the structure to define the stored procedure, but here what we have to do, we have to get the count of rows from this table. We need the total count of rows from this table. So let's create a query for that. The query will be select count. Count is a function which will give us the count of rows. In that we'll use asterisk because we need the total count from table name. What's table name? It is employee details. That's it. So it is our stored procedure which will give us the total count of rows from this table. Now what's next? To execute this. And how to execute? Select it and click on execute. In the message below you can see command completed successfully, which means our procedure name as return sp has been created, stored in database. And if you need to check this database like where it has been created or stored, what you can do, first you need to verify like in which database it has been created. And for that what you have to do, you have to go to the drop down list and check like which database is selected here. And whatever the database is selected here, this procedure will get stored in that database. So right now it is master, and you can change it. Like if you want to create this procedure in some other database, you can select that database and create the procedure. But right now we had selected master, so we have to look this procedure in the master database. So let's see the master database. Here it is. But first refresh it so that the latest changes will reflect here in this database. Refresh. Now go to programmability. And then you will find stored procedure. Expand this. This is our stored procedure name as return sp. But this way you can check your procedure like where it has been created. You can check the context, you can check the content here, and you can do lot more other things. Like you can execute it, you can view dependencies, policies, report, rename, delete, refresh. So these are some features that you can use with this procedure. But here we have to understand return parameter. So let's see that. Now the next part is we have to invoke this procedure. And how to invoke? Just simply write execute and then procedure name, which is return sp. Here we had just created the procedure with this script, and this get stored in database, but we didn't invoke this. If you need to invoke, what you have to do, you have to write execute and the procedure name. So let's execute this now. And how to execute? Select it and click on execute. In the result below, you can see we get count as 5. And if you check the table, let's verify that how many rows we have. It is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we are getting the expected result from the procedure, which is 5. So this was a simple procedure which gives us the output as 5. Now let's suppose we have to store this return in some variable. And to achieve this, what we can do? We can use return parameter. Because we have seen in the first point, it is used to return integer value. If you will check here, this is integer value from the stored procedure, and this is our procedure. So we have to return this integer value and then store this in some variable so that we can use this in our further queries. There came this scenario like if you get some output as between 5 to 10, then you might have to insert some data in some other tables, or you have to do some modification on the basis of return that you will get from the procedure. Now let's store this value in some variable, and for that we need some modifications. Let's do the modifications. So the first change will be you have to use return, then bracket start and bracket end. So this is how you will use return keyword. Now we have to execute this procedure again. And how to execute? Like this, you have to select it. But one thing, like if you will execute this now, it will create one more procedure that we don't need, and it will not work also because this procedure is already created. Either you have to change the procedure name, or you have to, like, there's one more thing that you can do here. Like if you want to do change with the existing procedure, if you want to do modification to the existing procedure, you can make it alter. Now you can do change with the existing procedure. So that is our requirement. We are doing change with the existing procedure, which is return sp. Now let's execute this again. Command completed successfully. Our change has been done. Now what's next? We get the return. Now we have to store that in some variable, and for that what we need to do here, we need to declare some variable so that we can store the value, the return that we get in that variable. And how to declare variable? Declare @ just give some name. Let's give return value. You can give any name depends on the requirement. I had given the name as return value, and then data type, which is very mandatory. So the data type will be integer because we are going to store integer value. Then execute @ return value that we had defined equal to procedure name, that is return sp. So here we declare the variable, and then to execute the procedure, what we do? We use execute, same we had done here. Execute and the return value, which is the variable that we had defined here, so that whatever the return we get from this procedure, that gets stored in this variable. Next is to print this, and how to print? Select @ return value. So that's it. Now we have to execute this, and how to execute? Select it and click on execute. You get the output as 5. Now you can use this variable in your further queries. You can utilize this value, you can utilize this variable. So this is how return parameter work. Now it is saying here it's used to return integer value. Now if we try to get the character value, will it work? Let's see. Now we need some more changes. Here we are getting the integer value. So let's try to get the character value. We'll fetch select name from employee details where id is equal to 1. If you will try to execute this query without stored procedure, let's see what we get. We are getting some character value, but return parameter only returns integer value, and this we have to check practically whether it will work or not. I think it will not work, but let's see. So we have to execute this again by click on execute. Command completed successfully. Our change has been done. So now we are retrieving the name from this table. We have to follow the same, but here its character value, we have to store character value, so it needs the change of data type, which will be var char 20, or you can make it 10. That's it. Now let's execute this again. Conversion failed when converting the varchar value Ramesh, which means we can only return integer value from return parameter. We cannot get character value. That we have seen here practically. Now coming to next point. If a stored procedure returns a value of 0, it means the execution is successful. Let's see this practically. What we will do here, we will do some more change. Update, we will try to do some update employee details set name is equal to ram where id is equal to 1. So this is it. We are doing nothing, we are not returning any value here. I'm just trying to show you, like if stored procedure returns 0, it means the execution is successful. Let's see, let's try this practically. So here we are not returning anything, we are just updating some data here with this query. Then execute this query again. Command completed successfully. Our procedure has been created. Now what we have to do here, we have to declare the same and make it int, because it's again will return some integer value. Then no further changes, we have to execute this and let's see what we get. We get 0. Right now with the update command we are not returning any value, we are just updating, but it has given us 0. So that here we have seen, like if stored procedure returns a value of 0, it means the execution is successfully. So here we have seen if it is updating some data, if stored procedure doesn't have any issue, then it will return 0. Now if you check the data here from this table, you will find name has been changed to ram where id was 1. So mostly we use the return parameter to check, to break the stored procedure and see whether the stored procedure is executing successfully or not. So that's why I just updated this point here. So you can use the return parameter to break the stored procedure and to check whether the execution is successful or not. If it is like, see, right now it has given us 0, but if you make it, let's make it 1. Now if you try to execute this again, couldn't find the stored procedure, but in the result if you will check, you get null. If it is not returning 0, which means there is some issue, the stored procedure has not executed successfully. Now coming to next point, we cannot return string value from the return parameter that we had already seen. We tried to fetch the name, but we were not able to get the name from the stored procedure when we use return parameter. We can only return integer value. We cannot return multiple values from the return. Let's see this practically. Now here, let's fetch select count star from table name. What's table name? It is employee details. Now here we'll try to get one more count, but the table will be different. From there's one more table which is cars. So if you will check here, I'm executing both the queries together without stored procedure, and if we check, we get 5 from employee details and 10 from cars. Now we'll make it return, close this, and here also we'll use the return and close this. So we are trying to fetch multiple values by using return parameter. Will it work? Let's see. Command completed successfully, but when we try to execute this here, we get only single value, which is from the employee details. We didn't get the count from this table. So that's why we can use return only to get a single value. We cannot return multiple values from the return parameter. So that was it for today's session. I hope you have understood return parameter, how to return the values from the return parameter. So that was it. We'll come up with the next session shortly. Till then, have a nice day. Bye bye. Take care. Be healthy, be safe, and most important, love your family. Bye bye.